great. So I was just saying, so everybody knows, hopefully I'm Joshua. So the point of this is, what can you do with these skills that you've worked for years and years to develop and refine, and your mastery of what I call the tools of the trade? And that's something that I wish somebody had said to me in school, because basically we live on the two things here, right? The steno machine and the laptop, or the computer. This is where we take it down, and this is where we produce the product, the transcript. Well, in captioning, the product is here on the screen. Now that doesn't mean you can't do both, and I'm going to talk about that. But the skill is something you can use outside of the legal world. So let's say you decide to retire from court and you still want to be a real-time writer and you want to make money. Number one, this is probably the best market, maybe other than, I don't know, San Francisco. I've never been on the West Coast, so I can't speak to that. But the income is very good and you're in high demand. And I'll talk a little bit more about income. The hours are, you're freelance, so you're in charge of your own schedule, and that's one of the main reasons that I left federal court. Because for me personally, being a full-time federal, somebody's laughing, my coworker. And may I say a little something about you, Angela? We started in the Eastern District of New York on the same day in October, I think, of 2015, and we sat in offices right next to each other. So we were trial by fire, no pun intended. We learned very quickly about the federal system, and let me say this, it's a beautiful job, and I would never denigrate court reporting, and I don't like when there's this air of superiority between captioners and court reporters, because they are both very demanding jobs. I don't have to tell any of you that, but they do require different skills and different technology. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Feel free to interject if you've been a captioner and you see something that I say and you want to supplement it. That's what this is for. We're all here to learn and just share ideas. So, all right, the first thing I'd like to start with, and by the way, this is my first time using a formal PowerPoint presentation, so I'm using the clicker, and this will be an interesting experience for me. So I don't like to feel like I'm lecturing, but that is technically what I'm doing, so we'll try to make this fun and interactive. So where I'll start with is the falsest statement ever. Can anyone guess what that might be? Let me see if I can walk over here and see if that does work. Hi, Howard.
You're going to get some of the money?
Well, that's actually, you're somewhat right. You're in control of the amount of income you earn. But what I'm getting at here is, if somebody thinks this.
Oh, no.
Has anyone heard some variation of this mentality? We have students who are in school that hear about the hourly rates that they can earn, which are good, and I'll talk about that. And so they say, or they think to themselves something like this. So they come into our field, and if there's one thing I want you to take away, it's that they are two separate fields, court reporting and captioning. And I was really disappointed when the NCRA membership voted down the name change, because the National Court Reporters Association should not subsume captioners, because there are captioners who do captioning 100% full-time. I do a little bit of both, so I'm not strictly a captioner, I'm probably 80% a captioner. But they're not court reporters. They have nothing to do with the legal setting. They don't work in court. So unfortunately, and it was a close margin. It was, I think, 53 to 47. So it wasn't, a complete. Well, yeah, welcome. It wasn't a complete all to one side. So anyway, the falsest statement ever is that you can do CART, and then when you're ready and when you've acquired the speed, then you can be a court reporter. And here's why. As court reporters, unless you're doing real time, and that's a different story, and we'll talk about legal real time versus captioning real time, a court reporter who's not streaming their text. And you all know you can write, and hopefully it's clean, but it doesn't have to be in that moment. Of course, it's better for you, because the cleaner it is, the less time you have to edit. But you have the luxury, as I did when I was a court reporter in court, of cleaning up the transcript later. Whereas when you're captioning and somebody is relying on the access to the communication, you have to either get it right or know how to fix it on the spot. And you don't have time, because they keep talking and you have to figure out what you're going to do, which takes a different mindset. So the main differences are how you think and how you write. So what I'm saying by how you think is, you have to break yourself of the court reporter verbatim mentality. And this is kind of the hard thing to explain, is that people say, is CART verbatim? And the answer is yes, it is verbatim, and the answer is no, it's not verbatim, because it is almost impossible, since we are not in control of who's talking, we are not in control of what they're talking about, Sometimes we get prep material, but sometimes it's not comprehensive, or sometimes you don't get prep material, so you're kind of thrown into the wolves. And if what they're saying, or if your speed exceeds your skill, naturally you're gonna have to either drop, which the bane of our existence, or you're gonna have to paraphrase, which is something you would never do in court, in grand jury. You're not gonna paraphrase whatever, of course. So you do have to change how you think, and then, which ultimately results in changing how you write. Not a dramatic retooling of how you write, but if they say Lamborghini, that's a very specific thing. If somebody was driving a Lamborghini and that's testimony in court, well, you have to write the word. Even if you just write initial L, final FPLT, and in your mind you know what that stands for, who cares what it comes up as on your screen at the moment. But if you know you can't write the brand name car, you can change it to fancy car or expensive car, something like that. And that's very hard to learn on the fly, especially if you go out and you start taking real-time captioning jobs. So just kind of setting up some of the main differences. Number two, and this is a fun one. First of all, how you dress. I would never walk into a courtroom dressed anything but like this. I can do a deposition maybe without a coat. I usually wear a tie. When I see court reporters in jeans at law firms, that's a big red flag. But this, what I'm wearing now, would be completely inappropriate for a college class, because now I'm really overdressed and I'm standing out and I'm drawing attention to myself, which is what we don't want to do. So we try to be invisible and not draw attention. You're always going to have people coming up, seeing the writer and asking questions, and I can always feel the eyes when somebody sits behind me in a lecture hall. I know they're looking over, and I've never caught anyone filming me, and if they did, frankly, I don't care. It's up to the professor to say, hey, put that away. But I'm not policing anybody there. I'm just responsible for myself. So you do dress like a college, if you're in a college class, you dress like a college student. Now, there are times, and I've gone to black tie events where I've captioned, where yeah, I'll dress up like this, because I'm gonna be surrounded by people who are dressed up. And then I've gone to, well, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So how you dress, where you go, and I have some slides to just kind of paint a picture of the various places you can go. And this is another one of the reasons I really love captioning, because for 5 years I went to nothing but law firms and some palatial, swank Wall Street law firms, which are beautiful, white glove with catered hot lunches. But it all starts becoming the same. And if you work in court, you all know that you see either the same courtroom or you rotate courtrooms or whatever the structure is in your particular courthouse. So you get quite a variety of locations that you go when you're captioning. Who you serve. So in court, of course, it's first the judge. Well, actually, I shouldn't even say first. I should say it's anyone who's talking in the room. You're taking them down and hopefully doing the same excellent verbatim job that you would do regardless. But when you're captioning, you're serving, if you're captioning an academic class and it's one student, that student is who you are serving. And you're there, and you don't work for the student, of course. They didn't hire you. They're certainly not paying you. But that's the person who you are delivering your skill and your expertise and your knowledge and your tools of the trade, all of the things that it takes to be excellent at the job. You're using all those to give the communication access to that person. If you're captioning for a large audience, like if this were a large hall and I were captioning it, I'd be serving all of you, even if you didn't know that I existed. And I'll talk about that. Sometimes the audience sees you and you're front and center, and other times you're in the back and they don't even know, and there are pros and cons to both of those. And who you serve with your training skills. Number 3 is how you get paid. So in a nutshell, captioning is by the hour, whereas court reporting is, of course, salary plus pages, and freelance strictly is pages, and whatever, basic. So captioning is hourly. And this is the best part, because all of a sudden you find yourself not having to proofread and transcribe 200 pages and have it out the next day. Now I will talk, I think, coming up, that there's this question, do I send a transcript? And the answer is yes. You always, at least I've been sending transcripts because it's a courtesy to the student. So at least in college classes, and usually like museums or other clients that ask for captioning, they always say, oh, can we get a transcript? So of course, I say yes, I give them the transcript. I don't get paid extra for that. You can have an arrangement where you get paid extra if they want a final verbatim scoped proofread transcript, and that is up to you to decide if you work for an agency, what the fee is going to be, Or if you have a private client, and I have a few private clients which all have come from word of mouth. That's the most powerful tool for building your business in captioning. So I've never had anyone say that, so I haven't had to do it. What I deliver to them is a very clean transcript with no untranslates. I do a spell check, and I always do some what I call tinkering, which is my nice way of saying I can turn in a 100-page transcript by doing about 5 minutes of tinkering, post-production work. If I know that I put a semicolon in somewhere and then it should have been a period, I'm not taking the time to clean that up because that's not the service I'm providing. So those fine nuances of punctuation, again, going back to changing about how you think, you can get away from that. But having said that, I put as much of that in real time while I'm writing as possible. And there are some challenges because sometimes somebody's talking you don't know, you think they've come to the end of a sentence, so you put a period, a page break, and then they say, which also, and you're like, oh, that wasn't the end of the sentence. And then you have macros that you can use, and I'll talk about that. Welcome.
Hello.
Just getting started. So, nobody here needs me to tell you how long it takes to proofread a transcript, so you can put that aside, and it's the most beautiful feeling in the world. If I've captioned for 6 or 8 hours a day, and I email out, let's say I've done 4 separate assignments, I email out those 4 transcripts, and I never look at them again. They're done. It's absolutely a beautiful thing. Okay. Just like we have ethics in court reporting, we have ethics in CART. So this is really talking about changing the way you think. We would hope that it would be common sense when you're a court reporter in a courtroom that your ethics are, of course, not to talk about the case with one of the parties, not to respond to a question, oh, what do you think of the witness, not to violate any of the tenets of impartiality. We have the same thing in CART. So this is from the NCRA CART Consumer Bill of Rights. There are some great resources on NCRA that I'm not going to have time to get into today, but you can just type in CART and you'll get a CART Captioner's Handbook, you'll get the Code of Professional Ethics, and this is specifically the Bill of Rights for the consumer. So when we go through these, I want you to think of filling in the blank. For example, number 1, the consumer of my captioning deserves, and then the word. So number 1, they deserve professionalism. That's self-explanatory. Education. Now this is a big stumbling block because what does that mean? You can caption anything and everything that exists on the planet, in the world, from the Big Bang, or creation, whichever one you believe in. So what does education mean? It basically means you have to be prepared for anything. Your general knowledge, what you bring as a human being who has lived and experienced life, read books, worked in court, participated in marches, gone to elections, anything that is part of you as an entire human being. I know it's very general, but the more specific you can be, so if you're captioning, I'm captioning out art history for the 4th time, so I feel like I'm becoming an expert on Italian Renaissance painting and sculpture. So it makes it so easy when I hear it's a Caravaggesque rendition of an early Netherlandish painting, you know, because I have that language, it's easy to write. Was it hard at the beginning? Absolutely. It was very difficult. So anyway, that's the second thing that the consumers deserve. 3rd is sensitivity. There's a whole range of how people, first of all, there's a range of hearing loss. Some are profoundly deaf, and I had one woman I was captioning for a room of medical students at Columbia, and the lecture was specifically about CART. So I was sitting right next to the person in front of a room of about 50 students, and so my captions were on the big screen for everyone to see, and she said, if a fire truck drove through this room behind me, I wouldn't hear it. So that's basically as profoundly deaf as you can get. And then there are people that when you're talking to them, they're so good, they've developed the skill of lip reading so well that you wouldn't even know that they have anything at all, any kind of loss of hearing. Some students are very sensitive about it. They don't want you to greet them. They don't want you to sit near them. They don't want anyone to see, and sometimes they'll be on their phone and they'll get the captions this way because they don't want the larger screen of a computer or an iPad where somebody who might be sitting behind them can actually see that they're getting the text. And there are other students that will say, hey everyone, this is Joshua, he's my captioner. So sensitivity, that is driven by the consumer. The basic thing is to always assume that they are sensitive and you never talk about or introduce them as, for example, a professor will say, oh, who are you captioning for? you say, I'm sorry, I really can't say that, I'm just here to provide the service. So a very kind of general response. Number 4 is confidentiality. Enough said on that. We don't, like I just said, we don't reveal anything about anyone. Impartiality. I struggle to find a way that this one, believe it or not, because that's like the biggest thing in court reporting. In CART, who would I be impartial to? I guess if somebody is a really fast talker or a mumbler, and that one of my pet peeves, I jokingly call it, is when people talk. Because you never know when somebody opens their mouth, what they're going to sound like, how they're going to talk. But certainly we're not going to change the effort that we put into captioning somebody who is extremely difficult. And, well, I have another slide on 3 of the hardest situations. Yeah, please ask questions or tell stories.
My daughter started her first year in college.
Yeah.
And her very first class, her professor is from Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan.
She can't understand a word he's saying. What would you do if you're the like card provider? What do you do?
It's a challenge. I captioned an Indian, I forget what, math. And not only was the accent heavy, but she would start a sentence and then turn and finish the sentence while she's writing. So what you do if you literally can't hear, you have no choice. You just put inaudible. Something, again, court reporter would never do.
Yell out, right?
You never interrupt. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good thing to say. Yeah, we don't raise our hand and ask for repeats. I've heard captioners who do that. Maybe Beth has a different experience.
No, I never.
I've never done it. I've been told not to do it. That doesn't mean that's the rule. It just means you follow the advice of whatever entity it was that hired you, whether it's a private client, whether it's the disability services office at a school, or whether it is an agency.
But Josh, in this case, now you're serving my purpose.
Right.
If the teacher turned around and I didn't get the information, I need that information. So what do you do in that instance?
So the student would then have to raise their hand and say, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. That would be, if the student knows that the caption, I'm functioning as the student's ears. So if I can't get it, and not because of my skill not being good enough, but because the production, the person who's speaking is called production. You have no control over that unless you happen to have a rapport and maybe you've introduced yourself to the professor. But even then, you don't ever want to plant in their mind, would you please speak slowly and clearly? Even that is like trying to tell them how to teach, and that's really not our place.
But would there be any communication between you and the consumer to say, I'm not getting anything now because I also can't hear it?
Absolutely, yeah, you can even send a note, right? Beth is not a yes.
And so, I'm sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, this is
Just further up, would this fall under education on how, I mean, sometimes when I talk about my students and say, okay, this is how you can go to CART, do we have that option to say, look, I know it's somewhere in the CART where you learn, at least before, I haven't looked at it lately,
Right.
where they advise that you learn a little bit of sign language to communicate with the consumer in moments like this.
Well, I mean, that's a great thing if you can do it, but you can't use learning sign language as a requirement to.
No, I'm not saying as a requirement. I'm saying just to help your skill in communicating with your consumer.
Well, you would really just steno the message saying, can't get anything, speak up or whatever.
Of my 5 students at Cornell, not one did sign. Not one of them did sign. They were
Right.
integrated from high school into the system, and none of them did sign.
Okay.
We knew break and water.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, that's more than I know.
Break.
I know
Break.
father, right? Mother.
Yeah.
I tried to learn it and I just.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
beautiful to watch, by the way. Oh,
Well,
and
but this is exactly what I'm talking about, Beth.
Yeah.
The small stuff that you need at least to communicate with your consumer. I'm not talking
No,
about,
they read lips.
big
All
like
of them read
sandwich,
lips.
all of that.
All of them are lips.
I see, okay.
And so I've never had a sign language in.
But I think what Josh is saying is he's sending his consumer a message.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah,
I can't hear this.
Consumer is now going
Yeah.
to raise.
I say, I can't hear this, and then I take it out of the transcript. Or I make a little
I
notation
don't
that
even-
dropped, or
Yeah.
couldn't hear, I'll change it.
Yeah.
I can't hear him either, because she'll look at me sometimes. I'm like, I can't hear.
Right. So we can't control the production, like I said. Yeah.
My only question,
Yeah.
and forgive me, you're using CART and captioning interchangeably.
Well, we're gonna talk about that,
Okay.
yeah, coming up. So actually, okay, I'll go ahead and, let me finish the ethics and then talk about that, because that's a good point. They have become one. So you will often do CART, and I don't talk about this, so I'm glad Mr. Garzone brought it up. We work oftentimes in conjunction with ASL. So you'll have the consumer has requested CART and a sign language interpreter. And so and here's the interesting thing, they trade off with each other every 20 or so minutes. If you're there from 9 until 5, you're the one and only CART provider. We don't work in teams for whatever reason, but ASL interpreters do. So number one, I don't have to tell you again how draining a whole day of writing can be. But number two, they are usually very well versed in what we do, and they struggle with the same things that we struggle with, and they can be not really even an ally, but just a friend, somebody who understands what you're going through. So they might talk to you at the break. I'm talking about the ASL interpreter and say, did you need that name, or what was that name, or they be your help saying, can you tell me what that name was so I can get it the next time? Just flat.
Is there audio sync when you write? Are there any rules with that with CART?
No rules.
Could you provide, let's say you missed something and you went home and then you listened to it.
Yeah.
And then you heard what this Indian mathematician said. Could you get in touch with your client?
No.
It doesn't work
I
that
mean,
way. It's simultaneous or nothing. Is that what you're saying?
I don't mean no, I couldn't get in touch with the client. I don't use audio sync, period, because we're not making a verbatim transcript. And if I didn't get something, and like we just talked about, if you send a message to the student saying, I can't understand the professor, the student needs to speak up just as any other student would and say, Professor, I'm sorry, would you repeat that? It doesn't happen as frequently, but using audio sync will get you back into the thing I said earlier, where how much free time you have. You're going to give up all your free time if you start going back listening to the audio to fill in every little thing that you miss.
But what if you had a client now who did want a verbatim transcript at the end, and you know throughout you
Then-
were dropping some things?
If the client says, and again, I've never had anyone order a verbatim transcript from me, but like if I took a ceremony, an award ceremony, and they said, we'd like to have a final finished proofread transcript, then I would use audio sync. I would use the same skill set that I use for verbatim reporting, talking about the difference in thinking about how you write. I've never done it though, and I've never used audio sync. It's nice to not have to worry or rely on audio. I'm always in awe of reporters who don't use audio in court, and I know in state court you're not allowed, and in grand jury you're not allowed. That's kind of like flying without the safety net. So I'm not shy about telling students, of course I used audio sync when I was a deposition reporter, because sometimes I want to listen to something twice. You can have your own opinion on it, everybody can decide what they want. But in CART, I've just found I don't need it. And I'm going to write later and actually give you all an experience. I'm going to write something with, I hope I brought headphones now that I think about it. Anyway, to give you an experience of what is it like not being able to hear the news, let's say, and having to rely on somebody writing it. Anyway, number 6 is accuracy. Don't need any discussion on that. Preparation. This is huge, and that's going to be basically the bulk of the second half of this presentation. It's a loaded topic. Number 8 is staying enrolled. That's hard, especially because you start developing a rapport with some individuals, and they really start wanting to be friendly and asking you your opinion on how hard the professor was or whatever. And you have to stay in your role. You're not there to be an emotional support. You're not there to tutor them or to help them. I mean, to help them, yes, to provide the captions. So staying in role is very important. It just means you kind of know what your function is and know what you've done this, so feel free if a situation has ever come up that could help shape the conversation. Number 9 is consumer choice. This gets a little dicey when somebody says, have you ever heard about that captioner so-and-so? What do you think of them? And you know what that means. It means that so-and-so wasn't that good. So if the consumer says, I only want this captioner to caption my classes, they've basically, in a sense, fired the other captioner. So I had a very difficult history class, and it was challenging, but anyway, I got the syllabus, I put the names of they were reading all the various authors of works from different countries. And so, I had my briefs and I was captioning, and the student, in front of the professor at the end of the first class was like, I can't believe you were able to get that. The last captioner just couldn't even keep up. So, number 1, I felt good that my skill was, working, but I felt bad that the other captioner didn't have the skill to do a good job, and that the student had to suffer through inferior quality. And then lastly is roughly edited files. So yes, that is a CART Consumer Bill of Right, number 10. They do have the right to roughly edited files. How rough? is up to you and your skill. Like I said, I tinker for about 5 minutes. I basically, there are no untranslates. I have macros to fix untranslates even at the moment they happen. And I define them. There's very good reason to define misstrokes as long as they're reasonable misstrokes, so that if you ever hit the misstroke again, the word will come up instead of the untranslate. Okay.
On the roughly edited files, I had to ask the person speaking if I could give a transcript to my student, whether they wanted to have a privacy with their work.
Interesting. I've never had that.
I had to do that
situation.
at Cornell a few times at
Okay.
outside lecturers.
That's interesting because I would think that Cornell's, whatever their version of the Office of Disability Services, we call ODS,
Yeah.
would have the arrangement with you ahead of time, and so you would provide the cart and then either send or not send the
I
transcript.
always sent the transcripts, but every
Yeah.
now and then they would say, make sure that you can,
Okay.
you know, if it's, he's got a confidentiality, he doesn't want it
Right.
to work out there.
Right. Well, that's something to be aware of if that is an issue where you're not sure that you're allowed to send it. So just be aware these are the ethics and the Consumer Bill of Rights. So kind of painting a picture of what, because this is what they're entitled to, these are things that you have to be able to deliver, okay? So let's talk about income, and I put this up at the beginning just because I just want to get through it. So it's very good. High 2 digits to low 3 digits, okay? So my range is anywhere from 100 to 150 an hour, and we're in a very good market. By the hour, I just said, is not by the page. That's sent as a courtesy. Different arrangement can be made for final proof transcript. So there you go. Again, I've never had it. Beth, have you had it where somebody actually paid you more? Okay. I see discussions on Facebook about, what do you charge for the transcript? And I've seen some responses. I'm like, oh wow, they do something very different than in the New York City market. But I've also seen some hourly rates that don't approach what we earn here. So you can make a very good living and you're in demand. Diane.
You mentioned the range, and you have also a range. On what does that depend?
Who hires you, how you've negotiated, how your certifications. So for example, when I interviewed, because I came out of federal court, I met Corey, who interviewed, who hired me for my first cart job. And he starts people at the lower end of the range and then gives them time to work up. Well, we talked like old friends for 2 hours, and because I have all the certs and I had the federal court and I was the president-elect of NYSCRA, he was like, I can't start you at a lower rate, I'm just gonna put you right up at the top. So, but again, it's kind of the same thing if you're applying for a job. If you have some basic skills, but it's an entry-level job, you're gonna start at the lower salary level. And then as you have more longevity in the company and you work on projects and bring more value, then you'll get raises. And some of that depends on your negotiating, because they're not gonna come to you and say, we'd like to pay you 10% more next year. I mean, they might, but you have to take the reins and say, hey, I worked on this project that generated some good income for the company, and I would like to talk about getting a raise.
Would something like the Tonys being captioned, would that pay more than college?
Well, the pay for that is basically about the same, but it's several hours. That was from, and I'm going to talk about the Tony specifically, because that was kind of my crowning glory. I was there at Radio City from, 8 in the morning until almost midnight. I mean, we had a 3-hour break, but we did rehearsal, and then we did the performance, and the red carpet before, yeah. So it was a good day. Question? Yeah.
Would it be covering remote cart?
I don't do remote card, but yeah, I'm going to talk about the technology. Yeah, actually.
So with the income, I just want to share, I did independent contracting with Cornell for 3 years before the ADA came through. And they said to me, well, we need to hire you. That pay sucked. And I did it for 5 years in the academia world. They gave me the highest rate that they could
Right.
in the market that they put me, in the job description they put me in, gave me a $2,000 sign-on bonus.
Yeah.
Cornell did, because they knew they were underpaying me.
Right. So that might be a point where you as the business owner, I mean, now you're switching to employee, but you have the negotiation power to say, if you want me as an employee, this is what it costs.
But I got all the benefits.
Well, there you go, and those are worth a lot.
And they were worth a lot.
Leaving the Eastern District of New York, I walked away from the federal court pension and benefits package, paid vacation, all that stuff. I don't get that. It's a big trade-off. Yes, Vince?
You also get paid for prep time?
That really, the short answer is no, but you can build it in. There's an hourly minimum. I have a 2-hour minimum. Some have a 3. That seems very excessive. So when I go to I have another slide on this, but when I go to a class and a student doesn't show up, even if they text me beforehand and say, I'm not coming, you don't have to come, I still get paid for the class, because I've carved that time out of my schedule, and that would have been missed income. So, okay, so here is what a room very similar to this one looks like. So, just a couple of things. I talked about sometimes you're front and center, as you can see in the first seat there right by the podium. There's my setup. So that puts a little more pressure on you. That's one of the cons, because everybody knows that you're there, and they're pretty much, they understand that you're doing this thing on the screen. I like it because I like being the center of attention, so it's not a problem. But what I really want to say about this one is there's one detail on the slide that's very important, and I just started doing this in the past, I'd say 6 months. I've only been captioning now for about 2 years, so I'm still very new to the field. But this is my intro page. So I do, start, cart, and I get a blank page that has welcome to, and then I fill in the name of the event. See the second line, communication access real-time translation, cart provided, operative word. Stenographically. Always promoting stenographically. If you tell them that, then they know that it's stenographic. If you don't tell them that, then unless they see you, and sometimes they don't have any way of knowing, and they will assume. And I've had people come up to me and they say, you were typing? Of course they say typing. You were typing all of that? I thought it was just some voice to text. That's a reasonable assumption because they just don't know. Again, that's why I wanted the name change for NCRA, because we are two different fields. But anyway, so stenographically is just my way of promoting as many times as I can. And this is only, again, for an audience, a projected view. With students, it's not, not necessary. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some settings. So here I was outside in Riverside Park for the Walk for Hearing annual walk. It's hard to see, but I was captioning on the screen, and I'm over here so you can't see. But it was really cute. I found out that there was going to be a little 8-year-old girl and her mother who were going to sing the national anthem and then Do Re Mi from Sound of Music. Do, a deer, a female deer. So there I was having to put the lyrics to that so that do came up as D-O-E instead of D-O-U-G-H, like money. And then when they sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, if I hadn't defined that, I would have had do, re, M-I for me would have been am I, fa would have been F-A, la would have been la, T-I would have been at this. So there you go, talk about prepping something that is literally as alphabetical as ABCs as you can get in music. So that was fun, and it was a beautiful day. What is this? The New York Philharmonic, or as I now like to say, Nork-Flark. New York Philharmonic. So this was fun. This was, and yeah, they let me get up on the podium and take the picture because I said, I'm a music student, and this is so cool. So this was called Phil the Hall, P-H-I-L, and it was when they have a brand new conductor, Jan, J-A-A-N, Van, maybe it's Jan Van Jack, J-A-P, yeah, it's 2 J's. And so he wanted to make orchestral music accessible to all of New York. And tickets for shows and things can be expensive, especially in Lincoln Center. So everybody paid $5 to come to the concert, so that was the premise, fill the hall. And then in between the pieces that they were playing, he would turn around, or they had other people come on stage and give talks about music and about the arts and so forth. So I was captioning. So it's hard to see, but here's my screen. It's too fuzzy, but it says stenographically there. And then I'm sitting right next to the sound booth right here. So I'm right in the middle, and I did this I think 3 times. So I got to hear 3 free concerts at Lincoln Center, and the speeches were all the same, so I was shortening my writing by the 2nd and the 3rd time. It wasn't very difficult anyway. I would say I wrote for a total of 10 minutes in a 2.5-hour evening, and again I get paid for whatever the times were. But you can, as a captioner, you can do stuff like this. And this is special for me because I am a trained singer, and I moved here to be a singer. So being at this is not Radio City, this is Lincoln Center, what's it called? New York Philharmonic. Yeah, that was really special. Then, this is a synagogue. This was before I started putting the word stenographic. Beautiful setting. And now this was hard because half of it was in English and half of it was in Hebrew. So,
Speaking Hebrew.
Yeah, exactly. I had the name of the song the cantor was going to sing, so I captioned that, and I had like the Lador Vador award, so Lad or LS-V, whatever you want to do. You put as much, that's talking about preparation from the CART Consumer Bill of Rights. You prepare as much as you can. You can't possibly be expected to caption Hebrew, obviously. Okay.
But isn't there a software or something, or the Google something? I think you had spoken about it before.
Yeah, I did, I
Is
demonstrated.
that, would you use that at the same
Well,
time as this, or?
not really,
either or?
because it's not, that's kind of in beta right now. I did that as a demonstration to show what's possible. It's not really a service that I'm really qualified or confident enough to provide, and that would have taken more prep work with the planners of the event, so that I could have gone in and showed them and maybe even written a few minutes in English with the simultaneous Hebrew translation and let them, because I can't read Hebrew, they would look at the translation and say, well, you know, it's not really that great, but we don't think we want to do this. Or the opposite reaction, oh my goodness, I can't believe we can do that. Let's absolutely do it. But I'm not at that point yet. But the technology, yes, is there. I just can't vouch for the accuracy. Yes?
You did that at the Jewish Museum.
Yes, what Diane is talking about is I captioned in English, I should have put the picture up now that I think about it. I captioned in English using an output into Google Translate, and so I had English on the left and Hebrew on the right, and Nancy was talking, so Nancy was coming up in the two languages. Of course, who knows what the Hebrew said?
I didn't know Nancy spoke Hebrew, wow.
Yeah. I could put
It's one of my hidden talents.
Yeah. Okay. This was at the Cooper Hewitt Museum, so this was a beautiful event, National Design Awards. So with this one, I was captioning to the screens here, and so the captions were overlaid on top of the speakers who were on video, standing at the podium right here. So with this brings up an interesting point that a court reporter would probably never think of, and that is, they only wanted one line of text. So they don't want the typical, blocks that scroll up where you have 4 or 5 lines. So with one line of text, and in pretty big font so it's legible, that means speaker designations it obviates using speaker designations, because number one, it's not a panel, it's one person at a time. So when they say, I would now like to welcome to the stage Nancy Silberger, and Nancy comes up and talks, I don't need to put chevron, Nancy Silberger, colon, because it's clear that Nancy is speaking. And number two, let's say as Nancy comes up and she says thank you, so I hit, let's say I've defined her as SNU, so I hit SNU and then TU is my brief for thank you. So SNU, thank you. If I do it that quickly, as we all do, we just write responsively, the SNU would pop on the screen, and what if the word thank pushes it one line up so that it disappears. So now you're going to have a short burst of like a fraction of a second of the name followed by the thank you. So it's almost distracting in that setting. So when we set up and I was there prepping. Oh, so who asked about prep? Vincent? I did prep for this job the day before, and I did get paid for that, but not prep as far as dictionary building. Yeah, and when I did the Tonys, I spent hours prepping the dictionary, and they did pay me a little extra for that, but that was just kind of throwing me a bone, not really a formal arrangement. So anyway, with this, I told them I think the speaker designations are going to be more burdensome on the viewer than just the text, and they said absolutely, just write what they say. So I defined all the names, but I didn't define my speakers. And you can't see where I am, but the sound booth is off on this side, and this was interesting because I was talking to a woman who actually saw me at another event, and we were having a conversation at this one, and then she came up to me and she said, oh, you're here, you were the guy doing that. She said, they were talking about those captions, which was nice, but here's the thing, nobody ever knows who the captioner is unless you're visible, which in this situation I wasn't. So they don't know that it's a live human being. They don't ever have a chance, you're invisible basically. And that's a challenge for the field, because we're not supposed to be front and center, number one. We're supposed to be providing the service, which of course we are. But consequently, people don't know that this is a viable field that you can get into, same as court reporting. So getting people into court reporting is hard enough. Then getting people who don't even know that court reporting exists to understand that captioning also exists as kind of an epicondyle to court reporting, to use a medical term, it's a challenge. So that's why I'm big on promoting stenographically and keeping captioning or CART separate from court reporting.
So in terms of, let's say, preparing a dictionary for a transition, do you put everything in, or do you really scrutinize in terms of, and that's assuming that you're going to write perfect, or that same way?
Well, I always aim to write perfect, and I'm going to talk about how to prep. And you put as much in as you can. Names, if you're given literary works that they're going to be talking about, slides if it's an artist, names of museums where the artist has shown, the Kunstnerheisen Museum in Munich, But you know, the thing is, once you define it, you have it forever. And you don't have to brief it, you write it phonetically. I'm gonna talk about when to brief and when to, I mean, again, it's all just opinion, it's the way my mind works.
And just so I don't forget, just one other question with that. When you're putting things into your dictionary, should it all go into your main, or should you be deciding the multiple dictionaries? That's
Hold that thought, that's a very good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is me at a Broadway show called The Nap, and I was not captioning the show. They actually had, because the script is all preloaded, so I sat here and they had a woman on just regular keyboard sending the scripts, sending the lines to the caption, to the machine, and then they had a Q&A talk back with the cast, so a few of the members came out and were talking, so I was captioning that live. So that was cool, I put this up beforehand. So, and of course, you know, you're getting arts for free. This is my favorite. Everybody recognizes this venue in New York City, little building over on 49th, 50th, Radio City Music Hall. So I've done it 2 years in a row now. Had to be there like 8 in the morning. I got to sit and watch them kind of set up, and it's amazing because it looks like, I mean, this is pretty cleaned up, but the place was covered in tarps and bags and, you know, just. We need caffeine?
Has someone dropped the coffee? No, the wrong room, I think.
Oh. We'll take it.
How did you get the job?
He's had
Just
first
word of
bounce.
mouth.
And they just called you up like, hi, this
Yeah.
is so-and-so from the Tony Award.
Yeah, I don't talk, like, if I were talking to court reporting students, I would talk more about your reputation and the quality and the work you have to do. That's like all kind of basic level stuff. It's all your reputation for being excellent at what you do. So, yeah, and there are some reporters that, some captioners that will absolutely not do something like this. They'll do college classes because you're only captioning for one student, and the pressure is a little bit less, or a lot less.
Did you meet any stars?
No, I didn't. But this was me sitting down, so I know. Well, one day I'll be the star. So they gave me a television, they had the script, I actually had 2 iPads, one with the script, and then one with the lyrics to the songs. So that was very helpful because captioning songs is, ironically, the hardest thing because sometimes you just can't tell what the hell they're saying. So lyrics, unless I know the song, are very difficult. Especially if they're doing a snippet from Hamilton where it's hip hop, you can't write that out. You have to do, you know, whatever your pre-scripting method is to get the lines like that.
Josh,
Yeah.
I once did a funeral for 2 deaf family members,
Yeah.
and I had to do the hymns.
Oh.
Oh, and I
Yeah.
did not prepare for that.
Right.
And I
That's-
should have called the pastor and found out what hymns they were reading or something,
Right.
because I didn't, you know, turn to this in the Bible, let's read this.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, that's not coming up. It was awful.
They announced a song, I Feel Your Pain. I did a funeral once and they said, I have 10 iPads, so I brought all 10. And yeah, they were thrilled, you know, they loved it. And I just put them at the front and I said, anyone who wants to use them can use them. So yeah, but that was a lovely event. And fortunately, there was no difficulty with like.
Oh, the books in the Bible. I didn't have them.
You have to have books, all the books of the Bible. I'm going to talk
You
in
have
this
to have
slide
that.
about
And that's just very
prepping for
important.
a religion class, certain things, Old Testament, New Testament, names, and so forth. So
I was new.
How long do we have? Is it 10? It's 11:30 almost. What time is this over? 12:15. Oh, good. Okay, we have time. Good. So, okay, how to become a confident real-time captioner? 3 easy steps, which are to prepare, to prepare, to prepare. To prepare what? In dramatic purple font, your confidence, your dictionary, to get to your question, and your knowledge of technology. So, this one is built upon these 2. To whittle it down, to whittle it down, to distill it down to the bottom line 2 things, you have to know the technology, which is how you actually send the captions, and you have to have a very solid, sorry, punch the screen, very solid dictionary, and then those are what increase your confidence to be able to then go take the work. If you have some real-time work in court, you already have, you know, some of this, and hopefully a lot of confidence. So let's see. Here are the essential questions to ask for each job. So the first one is, what device will the consumer use to receive the captions? We have the phone, we have the iPad, we have the tablet, and you also have a screen in a room, or you have a huge screen in a bigger room like the National Design Awards. So every job you take, you have to ask yourself these questions. What device and how will you send the the captions to that device. So for example, if your consumer says, I would like to get the captions on my phone. So here are your steno machine and your laptop. Now, how do you get the real time from Case Catalyst or Eclipse to go into the cloud and to end up on the phone? That's the secret step, that you have to know the technology to know how to do that. And we're actually going to simulate an exercise to do that. Oh, the other question is, who's going to bring the device? So are you providing the device to the consumer, or do they use their own? So some schools, and I prefer this actually, I give them my iPad, so I carry an iPad in my bag and I just give it to them, connect it to my router, and that's it. Other schools, they like to use their own device, and that means I have to rely on the school's Wi-Fi, and then I have to screen share. That's a little more problematic, but it's, again, it's driven by the consumer. Okay, so here are some wireless options. Most of the work is wireless. So if the consumer's device, we're going to look at some options of how do you send them. So this is the what and this is the how. Very simple, the plain vanilla laptop. You would use a screen share via the internet. And you can use Join Me, GoToMeeting, Zoom, any other kind of video conferencing, and you simply share your screen. What you don't want to use is something like Bridge, Summation, Case View, a legal branded real-time viewing software, because that puts in front of the consumer all of these options like annotating and word indexing and color coding for credibility. That stuff is not useful for them or relevant, and it just really kind of clutters up the screen. If they're using a smartphone, it's the same thing. The point here I'm trying to make is a smartphone is basically no different than a computer. It's just a lot smaller, which means you have to adjust the font size. If your font size that you're captioning to is the size that you would normally caption to a laptop, then those letters might look like tiny little print on a phone, so you have to make it bigger.
Josh,
Yeah,
do you have this printed for handouts, or should I be taking notes?
I'll email this. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
sorry, I didn't think about that. Yeah. Okay. iPad, this is my favorite because it's the easiest. You use, at least if you're on Stenograph, ICVNet, that's Case ViewNet, router required. So a router is just, looks like a small cell phone. And this is, I don't know, 20, 30 bucks from, this is RAV power. So you turn it on, you connect your laptop to your router and your router to your iPad, and then it sends the captions. You can basically do all of these with the internet as well, The drawback is the internet is not always reliable, and maybe you need a password and nobody knows the password. If you're relying on it, you may not be able to use it. So I 100% prefer to use my own router as opposed to the internet. Now, having said that, I know we all, or if any of you have taken depositions and you have attorneys wanting real-time remotely, well, that's wonderful. You use the internet and you send the real-times remotely. That's great. But in CART, where the service is really, they're relying on it right then and there, it's preferable, at least I found, to use my own router.
Is this one screen share? Is that what ICVNet is, or?
No, that's an app on the iPad that you download from the App Store.
Or what is the consumer looking at screen share, or they're looking at text coming in from that you're like
They're looking at
forwarding from the?
They're looking at the text on the app on the iPad.
Right. Okay.
Am I explaining that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I've never used the joint means. I always use the ICVNet.
You've never used which one?
Any of the screen shares?
Well, we're going to do this one.
Okay, I've always
Together.
used my Case Catalyst net, and with my router.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
they get all that garbage.
Right,
You're
that's what I'm
right.
saying. I mean, look, it's not bad. I mean, it's
You
less
can
than
take some
ideal,
of it
in my
out.
opinion.
You can move your screen around.
Right, right.
And one other thing, I had a consumer that wanted a black screen with white writing,
Yes.
and he's telling me as we're starting the
Yeah.
program, and I'm like, and I had him about a year ago, the same client, and he wanted it, and I knew how to do it. But this year I didn't know how to do it. I'm just like,
Well, I'm going to show you.
we were starting the presentation, and I just
Yeah.
kind of froze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody comes up to me and says, "Oh, can you do a yellow background with
Yes.
bright blue letters?"
Yes.
If it's not right when the person's coming out to take the stage, then yes, I'll do that. But if the person's coming out to take the stage, I'm sorry, it's too late.
It was too bad. It was just a panic.
So I've broken these into the two broad categories, wireless and then wired. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Remote streaming. So remote streaming is what you would think of as the typical legal remote streaming. So we have stream text, text on top, OneCap app, and others. I've used stream text. I've never used these two, but I see them on Facebook all the time. I'll see a job posting saying, can somebody take a remote, somebody asked about remote. Yeah, somebody says, can you do a remote job, must be proficient in OneCap app. So normally I'm not available at the time that they need it done anyway, but also I haven't used that particular service, so I wouldn't
For
respond.
remote streaming, you don't have to be on site.
That's exactly what remote is. Yeah,
that's
remote means
what
you're
I
at
wanna
home
do.
in
I don't
your,
wanna go in there.
yeah, in your living room, dressed to whatever
That's what I wanna do when I'm
state you
done,
want.
with working in the
Yeah.
courts.
I did remote once or twice. I hated it. I
Yeah.
like being there. That's just my personal opinion. That does not mean it's bad. And it's wonderful if you want to dominate that market and
Those
work from home.
are the programs that they use to facilitate the
Yeah,
remote.
I listed some popular
Okay.
ones. That's not an exhaustive
So
list.
meetings and stuff are remote streaming, a lot of meetings, you can remote stream.
Well, okay, yes, but for meetings, I'm in the room. I might be streaming remotely. That's a good point, is that I'm still physically in the room listening and watching people like we are here, and I might be streaming remotely, as opposed to me listening in on an audio line, like on my phone with headphones, sitting in my living room where I can't see anyone. That's why I hated it, because
Yes.
I didn't do as good a job because I literally couldn't see anyone. And then if the audio drops, I mean, you're dead in the water. Okay, so wireless and then wired, and there are really only two scenarios that I can think of where you would use wires, and that would be a projector, which believe it or not we still have, where you actually, and you become a master in stacking things like a phone book on top of a stool so that the projector is at the right level to project onto the screen or onto the wall. And you use an HDMI or a VGA cable and DisplayPort adapter. That's this little piece hanging out of my laptop here. This turns it into an HDMI port. I'm going to talk about cables.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And television. So just like you saw the television, oh, I wasn't captioning, but you can caption, basically just plug an HDMI cable from your laptop to a television and you can caption it that way. So those are, again, the two wired options. For large projected jobs, by projected we mean where you have a live audience of several people watching, you would usually use wired because it's more secure. You would never want to use wireless for something like that because if, like I said, if the internet drops, that kills your connection.
I've always asked for the client, the one paying me, to provide the projector.
Yeah, I don't own a projector.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, they asked me to go pick one up once, and they had a projector and a screen, and then I had to go get the projector and this big, long box of a screen, and it was just a pain, so.
I ask it to be there for me,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, yes.
So you had mentioned that sometimes you see job opportunities for remote streaming
Right.
and other things. Are there job boards or?
Sure.
or
Yeah.
this is-
Mostly on Facebook. Yeah, I'm not very active because I'm so busy. I was gonna put a screenshot of my schedule, but I decided not to because it actually shows students' names, so I decided not to. But I will tell you, for example, on Wednesday, I have class from 11 to 12:15 in the morning, and then I have from 12:15 until 4:30 free. So I can go to the gym, work out, sit in the hot tub, go to the steam room, get dressed, and go back to work for my 5 to 7:30 class. It's a beautiful feature of the job.
Do you only work for one college?
I work for three schools. No, I don't work for the schools. I work for the agencies.
No.
Yeah, but mainly for 3 clients. And then I have, like tomorrow, I have 2 jobs. I have a projector job in the morning, and then I have a job in the afternoon. I take as much weekend work as I can, if I'm not busy.
Is there like an upcharge for
Not really, because it's the hourly rate is already pretty good.
that? No.
Okay. So, cables, okay. The reason I'm talking about cables is because any one of these cables that you forget to bring can destroy your ability to do the job. Okay, so let's just talk through. Obviously, your writer to USB cable, so that is what you would use to connect your writer to your laptop. Always have extras. So in my bag are 2 more of those, and this is the one, and you can see that I have super glued a little Velcro tab here, so my main cable actually always lives on the back of my steno writer, so I don't even take this out and put it in my bag. Yes?
So do you always cable your writer to your laptop?
Yes.
Yes.
So does
Absolutely.
that preclude, if you go wireless from your machine to your laptop, does that preclude your outputting wireless?
No. If you use Bluetooth for your machine to your laptop, As long as it works, that's fine. The problem is, and I was in federal court when I was using Bluetooth, several times I would say about maybe 10 to 15% of the time, it just wouldn't, the Bluetooth wouldn't turn on. And then the judge would come out, and then I'm writing, and when I'm writing and I don't have my real time, I feel naked. I mean, I took everything I did in real, including in school. So I just finally pulled that thing out of the back. Oh, this is actually a student writer. I threw that dongle or whatever it is away, and I use a cable now. Because that way, the cable will, as long as it's in your bag, will always be there. And backup, so a backup USB cable. Laptop charger cable. If you're taking a 4-hour job and your laptop's on 50% and you don't have your charging cable, and then an hour and a half in and your battery goes dead, that's the worst feeling in the world. So always have your laptop charger cable and an extra at home. I have had to replace my laptop charger cable for my Microsoft Surface not once but 2 times. They do go bad. They are absolutely, and they're $80 each. I was pissed because I had to spend $80 after buying the thing. But anyway, always have an extra. A writer charger cable, have an extra at home. The nice thing about the Luminex, and this is a student, I use a student Luminex because I didn't want to spend the money to buy a professional one, is that it charges through the computer. So I actually don't have to have a writer charging cable, but I still charge it at home just so it always has a full battery. And then your router charger cable, a mini USB. So with the router, I'll just show you a little trick. So this is the router that I showed you. And in my crappy laptop computer cable is a USB port. So I can actually plug this in and plug my router into that and charge my router, my laptop, and my stand machine, which is charging through the computer all at the same time.
What is that again?
Well, this is the Microsoft Surface laptop charging cable, which has a USB port. Now, there are other devices that you can bring with you, and I'll just show you what brought a couple.
Yes, I plug my router into the wall.
Yeah, you get a better charge that way.
Yep.
But you can also have an external battery pack, which is very heavy, but this will charge my laptop, so it can be sitting right here sometimes if I'm in a room where I'm not close to a power outlet. This comes in handy. This is a very heavy-duty one. This was about $150.
And Josh,
Yes.
if I may also.
Please.
I have the Surface also, if anyone needs a computer. The Surface works great with both softwares, Eclipse and CaseCat.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that, because I'm on CaseCat, but I didn't want to make the presentation about CaseCat.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
but just for, if anyone is interested, well, does it work with one software or other? I put both softwares in my Surface and they work, because I use both.
Okay.
They work perfect with Surface.
Thank you. So what I just wanted to show you was this actually has the 3 prongs, so you can actually charge a device that takes a 3-prong into this. So it's, yeah, pretty heavy duty and very expensive. This is also RAV power. I was going to pass it around. It's very heavy. That's the problem, though, is that I carry everything in a backpack, so I don't take this with me. This is another portable battery pack which does not have the 3 prongs, so you can't charge your computer, but you can charge your iPad or your phone. So this is a very good device to have. I mean, you can buy these on Amazon for various prices. Price ranges, rather.
One thing I want to say, if you plug your router into the wall that carries your wireless, don't forget it when you pack up.
Yeah, yeah.
It's expensive, and you gotta go back and get it.
Yeah. This is not really something I was going to talk about, but I bought this particular bag because it has a spot for everything, but most importantly, if you can see in the middle, it has a little tripod pocket, so it's actually a camera bag and it was designed for a tripod, and that was what sold me on a Briggs & Riley $300 bag, because I was not looking to spend that kind of money. But I said, for that one feature alone, you sold me. So, yeah. And then on cables of HDMI or VGA for projected jobs, and then an extension cord. Always have see, I'm using mine right now for the 2 computers.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why do you have extra at home? Shouldn't you keep them in your bag?
Well, what I mean is, always have this in your bag and always keep one, oh, this one says always keep one in bag.
That's like extra.
This one, always have in bag and always have extra at home.
Don't you want the extra with you in case something happens?
Well, what I'm saying here is if, for example, you leave your cable, I'm not thinking so much if it goes bad, but you're right. I mean, it would be a little much to carry 2, but I did learn that
So you
my
have to
cable
go out
was
and buy it
bad.
again.
I had to go out to Staples and buy one 15 minutes before the job started. Yeah. So, I mean, technology, it's wonderful, but when it goes wrong, it really screws us up.
Josh,
Yes.
you said you
Thank
used
you.
the student writer.
Oh.
That's, yeah, the student, yeah, this is a student writer.
But don't they only hold like 50 pages of something?
So here's the dirty little secret. I've discovered this. No, they don't.
Secret of what?
The secret of the student writer. This thing will beep 3 times and will display a message that says memory full, real-time translation will continue. Meaning that once I fill up the memory, I can still caption, and I do that every single day almost. So I don't even
Right.
delete the memory. I don't use this for anything storage related. But one time I got that dreaded exception 3 error message that means that your program's closing whether you like it or not. I was in the middle of writing, and I said, oh beep, what's going to happen? So I didn't click OK because I knew that would close the program. I kept writing. My screen froze, so there was no real time on my screen, and I had that exception 3 error. The translation on my screen here kept going, and so I was like, how is that even possible? Because I'm not getting anything on this screen. And then I realized that I was going to lose this transcript because I don't have any memory on my student writer. Now this is the worst case scenario you could ever be in as a court reporter, right?
Right.
So what I did was, finally, about 30 minutes later, we took a break. I didn't end the file on this writer. I closed Case Catalyst, I started it over, and I translated the file from my writer, and everything was there from the beginning of the job.
How many hours was it?
So, well, how many hours? I mean, that was,
Like, was it 2 hours in the job, or an hour?
it was maybe half a day's worth.
Oh, okay.
So it holds. It holds
scary.
memory. What they do, it's called planned obsolescence. Companies will build a product and then plan the next product,
Yeah.
but then not give you the features in the new product because they want you to buy the one that they're planning already the demise of, so that you buy the next one. That's smart business. So we walk right into that. So this actually holds memory. If I were, and I'm not, but if I were computer savvy enough to know how to, and mechanically, to disassemble this and figure out how, because I guarantee you, if you took this port out, you probably have all of the things of the professional writer in the back.
Right.
That's my hunch. I can't prove it.
Right.
But I did prove empirically, the hard way, the worst way, that this holds more than however many pages it says
So
it
there's
does.
no disk in the.
Right,
Yeah.
right. There's no, like I said, I don't use this for storage, for a good reason. But I saved $3,500 by buying that instead of a
So if
full.
I wanted to buy that, it wouldn't be good for court.
No, I would never.
Yeah.
No, I bought a Diamante when I got the job in court. So I was like, I'm not going in there with a student writer.
Yeah, really.
God forbid I lose an arraignment or a plea.
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Aren't there writers designed specifically for that purpose, like the light speed and ones that don't have any
Yeah,
storage at all?
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just you have to really be in charge and know your tools of the trade. That's what I said at the very beginning. President Allen, thank you for joining us. Morning.
I
Howie.
have a question. I know that I saw when I went to attend the convention, that they said on the new writers, they have a feature where you can literally press the button and invite somebody to smoke for you.
Yeah.
Did you ever try that? You ever see how that?
I've never, no, I mean,
Have
so
you ever heard
new.
any feedback about?
I've done it. It's called Real Team.
It's
Real
real
team.
And,
Yeah, real
and
team.
how was it?
It works.
Wow.
It works.
That's cool. Yeah, I just don't work in a setting where that would be useful, because I'm not taking any legal work. I said right now I'm 80% captioner, 20% 80% captioner, 20% court reporter. The 20% is really deposition work over the summer, because that's the only time I have time during the week to take legal work.
I think they do a lot of that when they do the sports interviews. They use a lot
Do
of
they?
that stuff, but someone's editing for you while
Right.
you're taking the interview.
That is pretty cool. You know, we have the technology, and if you have the resources and the brain power to put something like that together, go for it. Okay, so cables. These are just some more brands. So you have CaseViewNet, ICVNet, CartView, which I'm going to show you, Connection Magic, I think that's Eclipse's, Stream Text, One Cap App. Oh, this is kind of redundant on the other slide. So now what I want to do is have us actually, before I do that, this is what my text looks like. This is how I invite a student in a college class to get the code. So the first one is me being a little more formal, introducing myself. I'm the captioner for that class on that date. To see my screen, I keep it very simple. I don't go into this to receive the card or to get the real-time translation, just to see my screen. They know what it means. Use gotomeeting.com and type in, and there's the 9-digit code. And then once I establish a relationship, or just they know of me, they know who I am with the student. So the next class was the next week, Modern Caribbean 10-4, there's the code. just short and simple, a text. I'm there 15, maybe 20 minutes before the class begins. I shoot the text over, and then they log in. I can see when they log in, and sometimes they don't log in. So that means maybe they're not in the class.
Lovely, yeah.
So that's if they're using a laptop or iPad, go to the .com, but if they're using a phone, they would need the app? Or
Yes.
could they use the app on the iPad also?
You can use the app, and we're going to practice the app. Do you all want to do this? I wanted to simulate.
Sure.
If this is too kind of rudimentary, we can skip it. But I wanted you to imagine yourself as the consumer. And so here is what you as the captioner would advise the consumer to do. I would say, oh, all you need to do is download the GoToMeeting app. So if you don't want to use your own phone, just kind of, you might have to rearrange yourself. Sit somewhere where you are next to somebody who has GoToMeeting. Does anybody already have GoToMeeting on their phone? Well, you're going to be very popular this evening.
Yes. I think I do.
I've used it before.
You've used it before. So all GoToMeeting is a screen share. Well, it's not just screen sharing. It's a video conferencing platform, which has the feature of sharing your screen. So it should be very simple. It shouldn't take,
Josh, I'm sorry, is it that yellow app, GoToMeeting Business?
Yeah. It looks like an orange kind of ink blot,
Okay.
something or other.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm going to. I want you to see the steps here.
It says business.
So by the way, I mentioned DisplayPort adapter. So because the Microsoft Surface doesn't have an HDMI, this is an adapter that creates an HDMI port. So now, if I can reach, I can plug the HDMI in and you'll be able to see this computer. Okay. So here is the case catalyst that we're all familiar, or the the transcript view that we're all familiar with. The screen in front here is called cart view. Okay, so this is just what captions would look like if I were captioning this session if somebody else were talking. I cannot talk and write at the same time. It's amazing how it's impossible. So anyway, so if you would go to GoToMeeting, download the app, and then start your meeting. So now this is me as the caption. I'm showing you the view here. I'm starting a meeting. This is what my am I in progress? Start your meeting. I thought I did.
Are you gonna give us a code?
Yeah, I'm just starting the meeting.
Does anyone know Plaza College's password?
Oh, I'm sorry. Fall 2019. Lowercase f.
Even better.
Sorry. So this is what me, the captioner, now, I, the captioner, would do. Okay, so this is what the screen looks like. So then I have this button, share your screen. So I click that, and then I can share, click my screen, and click share.
So right now it says.
Okay, so now you need to join the meeting. See down here on the big screen? Here is your code. So this is what I would send in the text message that I just showed you a sample of, 577-696-245. And we're gonna see, watch this attendees button. See, people are logging in. See that? There you all are logging in.
What was the number again?
The number is 577-696-245. And I mean, if you don't want, you can always just look at somebody's phone right next to you. If it's not working, don't get clumsy about it. Oh, sorry, you have to unmute. Okay, yeah. Somebody else did that. So now, just one little point now, so now you can all see my computer screen. So if you are now a captioner in college, make sure you don't have something personal, like an email or something, whatever, because now you should be able to see this, right, on your phone.
Yeah.
Okay? So now, what I'm going to do is disconnect this big screen, because I want you looking at your phone.
This is just duplicating your screen.
Exactly. Oh, before I do that, so the point, of course, is that you get the, I have too much stuff open now, the cart view, which is this. I'm not going to disconnect, I'll just leave it. So now, I am writing, and you are watching, And how does it look on your phones? Anyone care to share?
Nice.
Perfect. They're all on your phones. So there you go. That is CART being provided to a bunch of smartphones.
Wow, you're playing.
I thought you would say smart people.
This is so good.
Look, Josh, I sent you a message.
Oh, not yet. Thank you. So yeah, okay. Besides the technology part, remember my slide, prepare, your confidence, your dictionary, and your technology. So that's the technology piece. It's really that simple, but when I say it's that simple, you have to be in complete control of knowing how to do it before you go on to the job, which is why the very first thing I said, the falsest statement ever, I can go be a CART provider before I get my speed up for court reporting. People come into CART not even knowing how to do this. How can you be a CART provider if you can't do what we just did? That's the technology. But number two is thinking about your output differently. This looks completely different, of course, than your legal real time if you're if you're real timing for a judge, right? So this is more or less the view that a consumer gets in CART. Now, if somebody says that we talked about, I want different colors, so at least in this is called CART view, and this is provided by a stenograph. I can change the background. I can pick, this ocean blue, I guess, and I can change the font. Sorry, I should have warned you. I can make the font, I don't know, red perhaps.
Josh?
So,
There you go. Yes.
so remember how you said you had to change the font?
Yeah.
It was automatically here. Is it because you were prepared on your side?
I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't pay attention. What was the question?
You were saying that you had to change the font. Is that something that you did and that's why it came
Yes.
up perfectly here?
I changed the font. You mean when I right-clicked here?
I mean, not the font, but the size of it, like
Yeah.
you were saying
So
before.
if on your phone, if it were too small, because remember, your phone is seeing exactly what's on my screen. All I'm doing is sharing my computer screen. It's as if I'm holding it up to a mirror. So I can make this a lot smaller, and now it's probably very small, right, on your phone.
Yeah.
Right.
And consequently, let's say I was captioning to a big screen and I had it set to a very big font, that might look perfect on a big screen, but on your phone, it's like you're probably seeing the letter B and nothing else, or whatever that says, yeah, exactly. So there's a little bit of nuance to get it just right, and that depends on what the consumer wants.
But you did that.
Yes.
You made it so that, okay.
Yes, and I've had people text me saying, can you make the font smaller? And right in the middle, at that point, I do have no choice. I take my hands off the writer, I'm dropping whatever they're saying, I come here, I pull the font down, continue whatever I'm doing, and they're like, thank you. So I dropped whatever the person said. They don't, I don't want to say they don't care, but they understood that I wasn't going to be able to do this and fix the font, so it's okay. Again, you would never do that in court, right? Okay.
Josh, I just want to let everybody know, if you need CEUs, I'll be out in the hall punching cards when you're finished with your session.
Great. Oh, I'm sorry, the young lady.
You mentioned CART view, so is that a setting in Case Catalyst?
It is. Everybody who's on Case Catalyst has CART view, and again, I really didn't want to teach Case Catalyst because I don't want to alienate the Eclipse folks or anyone who's not on Case, but all you do is, when you translate, don't mind me again, you select output to CART view, local
Okay.
display, and that gives you the box that you're looking at. That's all there is to
And those
it.
features to be able to change the font
Yeah.
while you're writing.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right, 'cause I had to
That
ask
would,
you
that would be part of getting to know your software.
Exactly.
Which a lot of professionals don't.
Is this,
That's
I didn't know that one.
is this
Yeah.
Case Catalyst or is this the broadcast captioning
No.
version of it?
Case, I don't have the broadcast captioning version, which is right here, broadcast, which one? Reporter Suite? No. I turned off the
Yeah,
BCS
yeah,
button because I don't use
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
What, do you have it?
No.
Because that's an additional purchase.
It's very expensive, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I told the people that hired me, I said, if you need me to have it to do the job, I'll buy it. But I've been working 2 years and I've taken the Tony Awards and the North Clark, New York Philharmonic, and I haven't had to have BCS, so
Yeah.
I don't work on TV, so I don't need BCS, so why spend the thousands of dollars that it costs?
What's the purpose of it?
As far broadcast captioning is literally casting your captions broadly, meaning to televisions.
You're sitting in front of the TV at home,
Yeah,
typing or writing, and it's coming out to the world,
right.
Yeah, but he can do it without it.
not to the world.
I don't know about television. That's
It's what comes up on the television screen.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's where you have to have an encoder and decoder, that's beyond my.
That's why you need it, because you need to have that specifically, because when you're doing TV, you need to change your captions from top right, bottom right, and that's what the VCS allows you to do. Change where you're putting instantaneously, where you're moving. In baseball, you can't have it at the bottom, because usually the baseball score is there, the station announcement is there. So you need, those programs allow you to move, especially your captions around. That's why for most captioning worldwide, you need that BCS or Eclipse's captioning software.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
the student doesn't actually have to be in the room with you
Right.
to get,
But-
you could be at, just, you know, for the
If-
remote scenario. If you were at home writing something you were listening to, you could still cart through, go to meeting.
You can technically do it, yes. I show up in person, which again, I've explained, I prefer.
Yeah,
If the
yeah.
student doesn't come to class, then I leave halfway
Yeah.
through the class. They don't, in other words, if the student's not in the room and if they didn't have a
Yeah.
hearing disability, they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't have had the lecture, they wouldn't have
Right.
participated in the lecture anyway.
But I'm saying technically you can
Technically,
send
yes.
this to anyone,
Sure.
anywhere.
I could have my
Yeah.
parents remote in and stream this live. You know, yes, the technology is there, it's possible. There are really there's so much more we can do than we are typically called on to
Yeah.
do, which is why this whole thing is about post-retirement captioning opportunities, because you can do this as long as you become proficient in the technology and your dictionary, which is gonna be the next part. Oh my gosh, I have to move a little bit.
Josh, can I ask you a
Yes.
quick question?
Yeah.
So, if, let's say, grad says, Mr. Gazzone, I want to go into CART, how do I learn all this? If I send them to intern, let's say with Corey, which I usually refer, my grads to him,
Mhm.
is Corey in a position to maybe sit with them and show them, well, this is what technology will need and stuff like that, or
That's
are
the
they
hard thing,
out in the
because-
whole world to learn on their own?
They lean on people like me to provide that kind of
Yeah.
training, because this is really
Yeah.
school.
Except,
Which,
I
but,
know
no,
you're
you
busy,
know, why
I
would a
need to send them to
recording
you.
school teach captioning unless somebody were, that's why there needs to be captioning tools, which is gonna be another thing I'm gonna talk about is another opportunity involves teaching as opposed to actually writing. So let me switch back, we're done with the go-to meeting, thank you all, I'm glad that worked actually. That was heartening to see that it was so easy. Okay, so let me plug this back in. Get back up, there's my watercress. I have to, it's the #1 most nutrient-dense superfood.
Thanks, Josh.
Doesn't taste like much, but. Dictionary matters next.
Sure
Okay.
does.
How do you,
Get the,
how do
is that the next slide?
telephone.
Yes, okay.
you?
So, dictionary matters. Oh, not very rigid. Okay, so the question that somebody asked over here about your dictionary, and do you de-define or do you job or case define? Your personal dictionary is the mountain. And just take a minute to think about what this means. It's cheesy, but I was proud of coming up with it. Your case dictionary or your job dictionary, depending, is the view when you're at the top of the mountain. Does that make sense? Okay, I don't want to waste time or breath on it, but your personal dictionary is the foundation. And so if you learned SS as Social Security, that's part of your mountain. And if you hear the words Social Security, you write SS and boom, the words pop out and you're good. Now your case dictionary is the beautiful view. So if I'm captioning Italian Renaissance art class and they say Michelangelo, which they do 1,000,000 times, guess what? M*L is Michelangelo. But M*L in your mountain of your personal dictionary might stand for milliliter or it might stand for something else. Just like MM. MM might stand for misdemeanor, and in court that's probably the best thing for it to stand for because you're probably going to hear that 1,000,000 times in criminal court.
Methamphetamine.
Or methamphetamine, whatever, yeah. The point is, that's your personal dictionary is the mountain. But then when you need to have that extra level of, I'm equating the beautiful view with the beautiful real time, that's when you need to start becoming an expert in knowing how to do this part of it. Okay, so classic example is snoo and screw. In your personal dictionary, it doesn't really matter. Snoo might even be an untranslate, and screw might be an untranslate. if you take a deposition and SNU is the questioning attorney, Mrs. Jones, and SCREW is the defending attorney, Mr. Johnson, so you J-define Miss Jones, Mr. Johnson, right? You're not D-defining it because they're not gonna be Jones and Johnson the next day. Okay, so we're gonna go through some dictionary, and this is the stuff I really get excited about because I was doing this when I was in school. I started with defining the 50 states. I said, gosh, if somebody says, Connecticut, am I gonna be able to write that? Do I write connect, which I run K-E-K-T, and then cut? Or do I write what I now use, K-R, initial C, final T with the asterisk? And the steno doesn't matter. Whatever works for you is fine. Again, it's the method.
So you got my hand out of all states with big asterisks from back then?
Yes, that was one of the very first things that launched me onto this whole dictionary tear. So your real time won't just magically improve. It takes effort. And somebody I was talking to in the morning session said, I went to this all-day session, and those are great, but you can't cram for this. This is something that sinks in over a long time. It's not a quick fix, but you build on your mountain. You build on the skill and the real-time skill and the dictionary that you already have, and then you just keep building so that you finally get the beautiful view, and by view, of course, I mean the translation. So, your speaker designations, your classic SNU, if you're doing educational part, could be instructor, and SCREW or Jew could be student. This is customary to use 2 chevrons to introduce a new speaker. Odd with the asterisk stands for audience member. So we just talked in a slide ago about the personal dictionary is the mountain, case dictionary is the view. So I want to ask, where would you put these 3 strokes? Which dictionaries?
The view.
Which one goes in the view?
Your your case station.
They all go.
You would have a separate dictionary?
Well,
Yes.
I would have a separate
you would have a separate dictionary, because if you define SNU and SCREW, then when you take a deposition, you're going to have instructor and student, which you don't really want. So you want to have a separate dictionary that has your CART speaker designations. This one, AUD, that is in my personal dictionary, because it doesn't matter if I'm even using a personal dictionary, or if I use that stroke, that's not going to come up in a legal job. No, there's no audience member. I mean, there could be, but you wouldn't designate. You might designate unidentified speaker from the back or whatever. So this would be a D-define. Those would be not just J-defines, but a brand new dictionary, which I'm going to show you the whole method of how to create a new dictionary for your speaker designations. And then you have, this actually comes up a lot. When they play a video and you have no idea who the speaker is, so you just have a generic narrator. So NART with the asterisk. I'm a big fan of the asterisk. It's easy. I think NART without the asterisk is a misstroke for that's right. So don't override things that you use a lot. It becomes useful to open your dictionary and see how many times do I actually get this stroke. T, P, dragged P, H, A, R, T. If you've only used it one time, then it's probably not that useful as a misstroke. But if you've hit that stroke 250 times, you don't want to override it with NART for narrator, because you might actually misstroke narrator and get that's right.
The asterisk is great.
Yeah, it is. And then we have cart. So that's when I actually need to say something. That's less frequent, but sometimes I have to say, for example, when I had a student looking, I saw them not looking at the screen at the moment that the professor said something important, like midterm next week or quiz next week. So, and then they did a paragraph and it went off the screen, and then the student comes back to the iPad. I'll actually just interject cart exam next week, just something like that, because now I'm trying to be useful. Whether or not you do that is really up to you. So, changing Q&A banks easily to instructor and student. Just as an example, not that you necessarily have to do this. If you never take education-based CART, you won't need to do this, but how do you change all of your Q's and all the variations, all the drags and all the drops of Q&A? Like, have you ever hit the number bar so you get 1, 2, K3, W4, and so forth? There's who knows how many combinations there are. So anyway, I have probably 200 variations of question bank and the same for answer bank. And sometimes the stacking. That's why I don't use YE answer bank for answer yes, because sometimes I stack yes and then the answer when I want the word yes to be the last word of the question bank. So I don't use those bank designations with intentional stacking. That has worked against me too much. So anyway, this is how we're going to easily change all of your question banks to instructor and all of your answer banks to student. And again, it's not so much to recommend that that's the best steno to use, but this is how you create the dictionary. So the solution is, you create a new dictionary called chevrons, or you could call it captioning, whatever. I like chevrons because that's very specific. In the new dictionary, or in the personal dictionary, you open your personal dictionary and filter for all entries containing a question bank. So for example, I might have a question bank, this one with the asterisk, and I have I*F. Now I*F is my IVE ending, but when you're going fast, you don't always get it right. So I might have hit question bank and that for I have. So I want it to translate as question, colon, space, space, I have, instead of question, colon, space, IVE, because that's not the right translation. So I have several entries that contain a question bank and some variation of English either to the left or to the right of them. So the next step you do is you copy and paste, do not move, because if you move them, you are literally removing them from your personal dictionary. All the entries into your new Chevron's job dictionary. So far, so good. We're isolating and extracting, copying, not extracting. We're kind of doing dictionary surgery. Then you open your Chevron's dictionary and you do a search and replace, and you search for question bank, and you replace it with new line, spacebar, 2 chevrons, instructor.
That's good.
Does that make sense? How, what effect?
Is this just in
How much?
case Callis?
I'm over? Oh my God, I'm running out of time.
So you have 10 minutes.
Okay, let me speed through this. So that's how you create the, yeah, that's how you create the, I'm sorry, let me just tear it through. And then you do the same thing for the answer bank, okay. Parentheticals, laughter, applause, laughter and applause, sometimes they're followed, and in reverse order. People love these, I don't know why, they always laugh when they see them. My pet peeves are when people talk. So, people who read from their dissertation, they always read too fast. It's impossible. You don't have a PhD, and you know, people who ask long-winded questions before they actually ask their question. You mentioned, and then fill in the blank with unnecessary synopsis of the speaker's presentation, as if to show the audience, I was listening and I can synthesize your main points. And then they say this pompous thing, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about. Why can't you just stand up and say, did you ever study that in another country? That's really interesting. Just ask a question. But this is how people ask questions. And then inaudible students. Students need some public speaking training because you just, half the time you can't hear them. It's really frustrating. I put inaudible, that's all I can do. I'm not going to ask them to repeat. I have all of these, oh, this is great stuff. Macros to fix problems. Finger spelling, this is very important. You're going to learn how to finger spell and practice with your simple the brown fox jumped over. So you're literally finger spelling with capital and lowercase. That makes you very good at finger spelling words that you know you can't write phonetically because you've never heard them before. So then I have some wordsmithing tips. I'll send you all these slides, or actually if you would email me so I know, because I'm not going to know who was here. So a word like baccalaureate, all right, that, you know, if it's the first time you hear it, and you might try to do this, well, good luck, you know, getting that right. So then you start shortening it, maybe to 3, then you get down to this, and then finally you come up with that enigmatic brief, blarked, which, okay, that's a good brief for that word. But when students skip steps 1, 2, and 3 and go right from here to here and they're memorizing, and I don't mean students now, I'm thinking of court reporters. If you're trying to memorize, you haven't done this mental gymnastics to get to that solution. This is the work that helps that stick in your mind. So when people say, how do I write that? Because I have baccalaureate defined each of these ways because I've done the dictionary work so that I might forget this brief, but I know I can write it phonetically. Assuming I don't misstroke anything, I'll still get the translation that I want. Know when not to shorten strokes. So something like this. You might hear that once in an epidemiology class. So write it phonetically. No effective or necessary way to shorten it. Of course you're going to do this. Plas, or P asterisk F. For the job, for the day. That's the view rather than the mountain. Okay? But yes, I would redefine it phonetically. So if I ever hear it again, I can write it phonetically. Sample job prep for religion class. Somebody asked about books of the Bible. Islam for Islam. OT, I mean, why would you not do that, you know? Why would you not do that? Mose for Moses, as opposed to maybe Mose the lawn. MM, like I said, millimeter, misdemeanor, now it's Mary Magdalene. and Meps for Mesopotamia. You can't predict everything, but certainly the books of the Bible, the words like ecclesiastical, I mean, that's a hard word, right? But if you think about it, you say, that might come up, and sure enough it does. Catholic, Roman Catholic Church. The steno is irrelevant. The point is you make it simple as you can. I'm being sworn in 20 minutes, so I think I'm probably going to have to.
Thank
Okay, so
you.
my email is
Thank you.
Joshua B. Edwards 1980.
Thank you.
I have cards too, so if anyone wants a card.
Thank you,
Thank you guys.
Good job, Josh.
There's so much more. And I was